A September breeze at the old spas. We charge down to the wire of this 2015 racing season at Saratoga Race Course. Down to the final week. 6 cards, give or take 61, 62 races. And that'll be all they rode. Labor Day weekend upon us. Glad you're with us. Settling in on this latest edition, our first in September on the National Racing Report. The MIG, Richard Migliore, Andy Serling, Jason Blewitt on the outside. And you guys ready to recap Travers Week here, in which we had a major upset at the Graveyard of Favorites.
Major upset, but I'll tell you what, we had great racing. There was amazing racing this week.
As it's been the whole meet, it's been incredible just one day after another, and I think that's what's lent itself to this meet going by so fast.
No, I agree. And the stakes have really delivered. They usually do, but they really have this summer.
Yeah, no question about it. Now, we have about a dozen races to cover on tonight's racing report, kicking off with the 146th running of the Midsummer Derby, the Travers. Very nice ride from Javier Castellano. You guys can elaborate into the first turn when he decided to take the horse, who was outside Texas Red, inside of that one. At this point, American Pharoah has broke alertly, and he's in his usual spot dictating the pace.
Yeah, Javier obviously did his homework, and he got good position with Keen Ice, but this was the first time that somebody has really taken it to American Pharoah from an outside position. As Richie, as you like to say, he became the hunted here, and he's been the hunter.
Yeah, no doubt. And, I mean, Frosted applied pressure early and often, and you know, I know I read some criticism of of Jose Lezcano, and particularly from Victor Espinoza. It sounded like sour grapes to me, honestly. Jose Lezcano was trying to win the race. He did apply pressure. He leaned on him, but how were you supposed to beat him?
Absolutely. He's trying to win the race. It's a $1.6 million Grade 1, one of the most important races in the country, and Frosted was not going to beat him if he allowed American Pharoah to roll on the front, and he sat second. Maybe he was going to be second, but he's trying to win the race. And the truth is, they went 24-1, 48-1. It wasn't until that third quarter in 23.18 that he really went after him. But he went after him. He fought him hard. He lost by 2 lengths to American Pharoah.
Right.
The winner had a perfect trip, but American Pharoah ran his race. Arguably may have ran, I'd say, the second best race he's ever run. He just lost.
Second best behind his Haskell.
Yeah,
his Haskell was like a breakout performance. And maybe that was the reason. I guess I feel like he regressed a little, but maybe he didn't. He just had to run a different dynamic because they picked it up so much in the middle when normally he's getting a breather and keeping that good rhythm.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this situation, he had to have faced some adversity. He had never been in a position where he was facing significant pressure from the outside. He'd always been able to be outside of other horses, and it took a toll on him. Listen, he's had a very arduous campaign. In my opinion, you look at his Beyer, 105 here, the same Beyer as the Belmont, the same as the Derby, better than the Preakness, the Haskell is a 109. He ran a very, very good race because he earned that figure under less than perfect conditions, under somewhat adverse conditions. And he continues to do this, shipping back and forth across the country, dancing every dance. It's a true credit to American Pharoah that he's still able to run at this high level at the end of the year.
Well, you know, I think he gained something in defeat here, and I won't put it on the Seattle Slew Exceller level. But, Jason, did you think when he spurted away from Frosted again at the top of the lane that he was going to go on to victory?
Thought he was home. It looked like Frosted turning for home may have gotten half a head in front, and I said, oh, man, just like everybody else, including Bob Baffert, Pharoah's in deep trouble. But he fought him off. You could really see him, I mean, gritting his teeth and kick clear, but in the end it took a perfect trip, perfect ride, and a well-timed move from Javier Castellano, who picked up his 5th Travers victory aboard Keen Ice.
And about as well-deserved one as you can point out. Richie, I thought this was about as thrilling a big race as I've seen in a long, long time. Because as you guys are saying, we all thought American Pharoah was beat here. And just the fact that he was able to accelerate away in mid-stretch, and yeah, he got picked up late, but man, he fought.
He fought, and we were showing this head on because around the turn, what I guess Victor Espinoza kind of said he was getting bumped, you could see he was being race-ridden. He was riding close. Jose Lezcano did nothing outside the boundaries of the rules. And you know what? If I'm a trainer, I want my rider to ride like that. I want him to give no quarter. You've got to make it as uncomfortable as possible to try to win.
Absolutely. I think there was so much good in this race. You know, with Frosted taking it to him like that, Frosted getting his best chance. Frosted ran extremely well, beaten just under 3 lengths in this race, which is exactly 3 lengths. Thought these horses really ran. This is big money, big racing, and at the end of the day, Keen Ice was a little bit lucky. I don't want to take anything away from him. We'll talk about it, but he got the perfect trip and the good setup. But let's face it, Dale's done a remarkable job with a horse that was sort of nowhere going to the Kentucky Derby.
Well, I think he's a prime example of a horse that has been developing and growing up and maturing right in front of our eyes, slowly, but he did get a good setup, but he did run. We do have to give him the credit he's due.
Absolutely, he delivered, and when you think about how he's improved from race to race, why wouldn't you believe that there's not more improvement? And his 4-year-old season could be a very good year.
Well, even if they run him back, and it sounded like Jerry Crawford was considering or leaning towards keeping Keen Ice fresh and going into the Breeders' Cup off whatever it is, an 8 or 9 week layoff. But say they run between the Travers and the BC Classic, I wouldn't totally discount this horse against older horses off the effort he put forth Saturday at 10 furlongs.
Not at all, because you know that he's going to be fine going 10 furlongs. You don't know if a horse like Honor Code, assuming he gets the Breeders' Cup Classic, is going to be as effective in a 1.25 miles. And I also think Keen Ice has shown he can sit a little bit closer. He's not quite as pace-dependent as Honor Code. I'm not saying he's as good as Honor Code, but he's not quite as pace-dependent.
I agree with that. I was a little disappointed, that Farrow lost because of the atmosphere.
Sure.
I want the fans to really enjoy that. But it certainly made the Breeders' Cup Classic get a lot more interesting, didn't it?
Absolutely. And the other thing is, I think it's important for the fans to understand, they were treated to a tremendous race. They shouldn't in any way be let down that American Pharoah lost. He came here, he faced the pressure, he ran a great race, he didn't finish first. You can't put too much emphasis on winning. He ran a great race.
So we should thank the Zayat family and Bob Baffert for bringing him. That's what sportsmen do. And that's, the atmosphere when he galloped. That's what makes this game so great, that people can be inspired so much by a horse. And Texas Red, just a no-show?
It's like he just didn't appear. I mean, he never got into the race, and it's too bad because he's the one horse you wish he had run well. He's a better horse than that. I think everybody else pretty much ran their races, and you talk about the connections. Bob Baffert is better in defeat than he is in victory. Not that he's bad in victory, but you learn so much from people, and all of us, from how you are in defeat as opposed to victory. Bob Baffert is one of the most gracious losers you'll ever encounter.
Well, that even goes back, and not to spend too much time because we got to get going, the 1998 Triple Crown with Real Quiet and losing the Triple Crown and that $5 million visa bonus by a nose, and he handled it like a man. But thank you to Bob Baffert, as Mig said, and the Zayats, and Travers Week 1 we will never forget. It will go down in the history of the Old Spa. Moving on to the other major 3-year-old stake on Saturday's card, the NYRA.com King's Bishop. Maria Burrell, trainer who brought a horse who had previously won at Indiana and Ellis Park, is in town with the fast Run Happy, and he just bottomed out the field. This was a tour de force performance in his Saratoga debut.
Unbelievable. This was the performance of the day. I mean, you can talk about the Travers all you want. It was an amazing race and a great, thrilling race. But this was one of the performances of the year. This horse buried a good field, went 2 seconds faster than the Ballerina at the same distance, and over a half a second faster than Private Zone. This was tremendous.
This was tremendous, and this is a prime example. You want to just, watch this replay when we say it's not how fast you're going, it's how you're going fast. Well, he was aptly named. He was running happy on the lead, and even though he was going quick, he was doing it the right way. Horses like to get comfortable. It's not, to me, when you get in their way, you're taking more energy away from them.
I completely agree with you, and Edgar Prado let this horse do what he does well. And he outran some pretty fast horses here. And also, getting him down to the rail, he can dispel any foolish notion I heard from people that the rail wasn't the place to be. Once again, the rail has been fine for almost the entire meeting at Saratoga. And he left some pretty good horses in his wake, including Holy Boss, who ran his race. He just couldn't get within 5 lengths of this horse.
No, was just third best behind, was that Limousine Liberal, who also came in. It was an Ellis Park Exacta in the NYRA.com's King's Bishop. The P-Patch, thank you very much. Colt by Super Saver, and Edgar Prado, a case of him real fast, turning back the clock to some of his glory days here at Saratoga.
I remember a pretty good horse from Maryland. I can't remember his name, but he won, I think, the Amsterdam and King's Bishop, and I want to say 1998. Maybe Richie can remember the name.
No, I'm blank.
We may have a little trivia game during the break. On the other side of the timeout, we talk about Private Zone, another freakish effort taking Saturday's Priority 1 Jets 4-go. Stay tuned. Back Back on the Racing Report, we'll try to go as fast as the sprinters who battled 7/8 down the backside in Saturday's Priority 1 Jets 4-go. Private Zone has built up a NYRA sprinting resume like few horses have over the last quarter century. 2 Vosbergs, a Cigar Mile, a Belmont Sprint Championship, a third in the Met Mile, which is a bit further than he wants to go, in my opinion. And here you have him Saturday winning another Grade 1 that had a purse of $700,000.
No, he's been a remarkable horse. He's a horse that you really can appreciate and love. I'm not knocking him, but let's compare some fractions. He went 22.67, Run Happy went 22.43. He went 45.1, Run Happy went 44.54, and Luke's running a half a second faster. It shows how good Run Happy was. Private Zone did have everything his own way.
Well, he got so comfortable on the lead. He was rating on the lead because he's such a naturally fast horse. And Martin Pedrosa, you could see he gets real tight on him, real small. He gets a kind of short hold of him, and that horse gets his ears up. And you knew about 3/8 of a mile into this race, it was over.
It was over when he got the half in 45. But the truth is, the Big Beast had every chance. He got in good position. Johnny did exactly what he needed to do. He got him outside in the clear. He was right off that fairly moderate pace for this kind of race. He's just not as good as Private Zone.
Exactly. Private Zone was the best horse. One thing we've got to say out of this race affected the Travers. Because Joel Rosario was unseated in this race and taking up his mounts. And I just think Joel might have ridden Frosted differently.
You know what? I'm glad. I'm glad Joel's doing well. You certainly don't want to see anybody get hurt, but I still love the way the Travers played out anyway. But it's a very good question, Richie. It's a great question.
Right? You'd have to think it had something to do with, how the tactics played out.
It'll be a great footnote. It's a great footnote in racing to remember how one event can affect another. But you're right. It's an amazing situation.
You just hope you get some answers at least going forward in the fall, maybe in the Breeders' Cup Classic, if nowhere else, regarding Keen Ice, American Pharaoh, and a good group of older horses, some of which we'll see this coming Saturday in the Grade 1 Woodward. That'll do it for Private Zone, who Jorge Navarro said he might stretch out in the BC Dirt Mile. I don't like that plan, but let's get on to David Fox in Saturday's Personal Ensign. We had Maria Burrell taking the King's Bishop. You had Jorge Navarro taking the 4-go, and now David Fox shipping in from Florida with the likable, and she's a good one, Sheer Drama, and getting the money in this classic Grade 1.
No, we didn't have our usual cast of guys winning big races here, especially you throw in Andre Fabre winning a big race a little bit later. Joe Bravo gave her a perfect ride. She got a perfect trip. She got it done. I think he's done a great job with her. It's a disappointing. This group, they can't beat like the likes of Beholder.
No, it's definitely Beholder and then everybody else. But this underscores the fact there's so many big races and graded, Grade 1s, graded races with big purses that if you manage a horse as well as David Fox is managing this filly, and she's fallen into these perfect trips because she's got natural speed and she's tractable.
Yeah.
You can make a lot of money.
No, I agree. And I think the one thing you really give David Fox credit for, and I think Joe Bravo deserves some as well, you've got a horse that felt like she was a bit distance challenged.
Sure.
And she wasn't finishing races, even in a 1/16 to a 1/8 on 2 turns, to win the 1.25 race at Delaware and to win the 1.8 Personal Ensign in Saratoga. You don't get there without good handling.
No doubt. But and it was another case of, though, when they're going to the half-mile pole, you had Untappable and Stop Charging Maria having to entertain each other. Neither one of them could kind of let go with the other one. And there's Sheer Drama and Joe Bravo licking his chops going, oh, this is working out perfect.
No, it didn't work. It fell right into his lap.
And for David Fox, we've seen him take the tour. Big Drama. He's a very good horseman who's based for most of the year down in Florida. And how about Harold Queen, the owner and breeder, longtime fixture in the game, has a farm down in Ocala. I mean, he's got a homebred by Burning Roma, who stands for about $750, getting a Grade 1 in the Personal Ensign at Saratoga.
Amazing. It's funny, we were talking about Tony Dutcher before the show. I think Burning Roma had a few trainers, but I think Tony Dutcher trained Burning Roma for at least part of his career. He was a neat hard knocker, but you're right.
I think he won the Futurity, beat a very good horse either for D. Wayne Lucas or Todd Pletcher going back. We have Jersey Joe in the winner's circle. Let's move on to another one of our favorites in Dallas Stewart. And this is the way it's supposed to be as we look at Saturday's Grade 1 Ballerina. You've got a mare, a homebred for Charles Fifke by the late great Unbridled Song, out of a Kentucky Oaks winner in Lemons Forever. You're supposed to get a good horse, and I'll tell you, this filly Unbridled Forever is pretty good.
And let's give Dallas credit. He had to choose between this race and the 1.8 Personal Ensign, and you always put yourself in a position you could second-guess yourself. She won the Shine again, and she won this race. Dallas won 2 races to meet. They were with this horse, but they were big races.
They were big races, and I just loved the ride from Johnny Velasquez. He got her more involved because the pace was slow. She wound up, in behind horses, but he was able to cut the corner and then come out. Dallas Stewart, it's had to be a hard decision because she has run good races further. you know, you start looking at the shine again. Did it fall apart? Was it less company?
Sure. Was it turn back? Was it? She got all that in her favor?
You've got Untappable, who's not at the top of her game, and she wasn't favored, but no killers per se in the personal engine. But a heck of a job managing, and it's good to see an old Dwayne Lucas protege getting a Grade 1 with the white bridle for an owner and breeder in Charles Fipke, a world-renowned gemologist who has put up quite a bit of money in the game.
No, he's been a great player in the game. He had a very good-looking 2-year-old we'll see later on the show. This was a slow race. It was 2 seconds slower than King's Bishop, a second and a half slower than the Forego. This is not a killer division.
All right, let's move on. And La Verdad was that early scratch with inflammation in one of her legs. We move on to the globe-trotting Flintshear, who's just a beast. I mean, a just solid day in, day out, Group 1, Grade 1 runner who's been all over the world. And I love the ride here at even money from Vincent Chamar.
No, a perfect ride. Did everything right with this horse, and he made sure he's in position. He couldn't get in trouble. I'm amazed he paid even money. This horse has been running second behind horses like Trev, running against Dunyaya. With all due respect to our horses, and I think Red Rifle is a terrific horse. That Todd's done a great job with this horse, but this horse is in a completely different league.
Yeah, I mean, he looked up and didn't see Trev in the starting gate, and he went, wow, this is going to be fun. What impressed me about this horse, other than the obvious, was he's such a big horse on the 7/8 turf course. He was like a cat. He hugged the fence. Most big horses aren't that agile. He was unbelievable, and when his rider, who used to be a steeplechase rider, Andre Pop took him, made him a flat rider. He's been a sensation over there in France. When a hole presented itself around the turn and he dropped his hands, this horse went around like a hoop around a barrel.
No, I agree. It is interesting what you're saying. He had no trouble at all. He got himself in a position, and it wasn't a super slow pace. It was nice to see him rolling along, and he finished the final quarter in 1.5 miles in 22-1.
He's just a good horse. Back to France, Andre Fab's base at Chantilly. Potential start in the Breeders' Cup Turf. They may take on Trev again as she looks for that unprecedented three-peat in the Arc, but a good one who wowed the 50,000 in attendance on the Travers undercard. And speaking of Travers Day, a hat trick for Javier. We'll talk about it when we come back. All right, in the home stretch on the Racing Report, just like this Saratoga meet, back to the action. 7th grade at stake on Saturday's card, and this was the race after Ferro got beat in the Travers. The Kettle won Boston Spa. The Cita got a great ride from Javier Castellano, who really took a big step forward on Travers Day. He rode lights out.
Half an hour after the Travers, he gave this ride. I can feel Mark Cassie's pain. We've both had pretty tough meets, and nobody's had it tougher than Tepin, who came within inches, basically, of winning a Grade 1 and a Grade 2 with her brutal beat in the Diana and another brutal beat here. I mean, she looked home, Richie.
She looked home, except for Dacita with this devastating late turn of foot. How could you expect to get caught from there? And, you know, I know people, when you lose by a head, people are always looking for excuses or coming up with blame somewhere. She got caught, and that's that.
She just got caught in here, and nobody else was closing. It's not like the race was falling apart. And Jay and I were joking. A couple guys on Twitter blamed Julian Leperoux for Tepin's beat, and I said to him, what are you going to do, blame him for American Pharoah losing as well? I mean, the guy did everything right on this horse. He's had a tough meet, but he couldn't have done anything differently here. He couldn't have done anything to help his chances more.
So unfair. He is the horse player's whipping boy. You know,
he really is. And listen, he you know, sometimes he takes horses back, but overall, people are unfair to him. I think that Tepin ran really well, but Dacita, we'll see if she can build on this. This was some run.
This was some run. And Dacita adding to the embarrassment of riches from the Chad Brown barn. It's just one good horse, and they're coming from anywhere, South America, Europe, America, anywhere.
Well, this horse was running against that other horse, Il Campione, that we haven't seen since the poker that Chad has. I don't know if he's showing up again, but if this horse can run like this, so can he.
137 wins on the year, entering Monday's program for Chad Brown. He's second in the nation with over $12 million purse money won in the bank. Let's move on to the 2-year-old action. No Travers Day would be complete without a couple of 2-year-old races. We had split divisions. Up first, Ready Dancer, as it was the student getting better of the teacher. Todd Pletcher, D. Wayne Lucas, first and second by a long ways.
Tough meet for Wayne Lucas as well, and looked to have a good-looking 2-year-old in Condominium, but he got worn down by Ready Dancer, who I'm going to say really improved in his third start.
And with blinkers. Yeah. And you know, it was noticeable that he was much more in the bridle, much more attentive, and there were a lot of horses that were talked about going into this race. Sail Ahoy, Attraction, and the way he did it, maybe the blinkers was the key, and experience always helps.
Yeah, the experience did help. This race, and we're going to watch another one, went a little bit faster than the other one. Still, I like the other race a little bit more, especially the winner of that race. I think it's the next one we're showing.
Yeah, let's check them out. Tail Saval, a firster by Tail Bacati, who took all sorts of play. And I do love that shot high above the finish line at the Spa. But let's move on to the second division. I guess these horses ran a little over an hour later in the fourth race. Tail Saval debuted against 8 rivals, and only one horse, Conquest Nitro, had experience in this one.
And Conquest Nitro had actually finished just behind Ready Dancer, and you think your point of the blinker is obviously true, and you could see the comparison here in the 2 races they ran. But you've talked about it a lot, Jason. Barclay Tagg started like a dozen horses to me. He's got 5 wins. He's had 2 first-time starters win.
Well, you know, it's funny. I went back and looked at the work tab of both those horses, and it's an interesting thing. They have one work about 2 works before they start that's fast out of the gate, and then he kind of backs them back down. And I think that's almost like a tell. If you're looking to see if one of Barclay's first-timers are live, look back 2 or 3 works before they start. If there's a good, sharp gate work, they're live.
And he's as old school, not to cut you off, as old school as it gets. And I say that with a great deal of respect. It's been a real neat story to see Robin Smolin and Barclay Tagg knocking them dead here at 5 for 12 through the final week.
Especially considering they had a lot of bad luck at Belmont. So it was nice to see it turn around for them. And, you know, I think a lot of us knew, you know, when Funny Side came around, you heard a lot of this, oh, the guy's come out of nowhere. Who is this guy? And every one of us has been around the game. It's like, I've known Barclay Tagg was a great trainer for 20 years.
Right. Yeah, and he has been a great trainer. And think about the people he worked for, guys like Frank Whiteley. You know, he had the foundation. And another win from Charles Fipke, owner, breeder. And we were saying off camera before, what a tough game this is. Lemons Forever's full brother ran at Thistledowns for $5,000 the same day his sister was winning a Grade 1.
How do you do?
I actually didn't follow up and look, but that underscores the fact Mrs. Mays had 9 children. She only had 1 Willie.
And tweet out the result after we finish taping. And we're nearly done, in fact. We've got a couple races remaining. In fact, one from the day after the Travers. No grade at stake on the post-Travers card. We ran 11. It was a long day for everybody, but the racing was good. And here's the star, Lady Shipman, who, in a word, and it's a word we rarely throw out, she quite simply is a freak.
She really is. I mean, where she comes from, she's a running fool. And she showed that she could rate a little bit in this race. I'm telling you, she should be considered one of the favorites, the Breeders' Cup Turf Spread at this point.
Well, especially because it's at Keeneland. It's 5.5. It's not at Santa Anita coming down the hill 6.5, which might be stretching it for her because she's just so fast. A new track record there. She's not a lot to look at, Andy. You look her in the paddock, you would not pick her out of a group and say this is the one that can fly.
Well, she's a midshipman. With all due respect and peace and love, we have not seen too many midshipmens that have lit the world on fire. And to me, what spices up the story and intrigue, aside from her blinding and blazing speed and the fact she was able to rate, Kathleen O'Connell trains her. She's not going out for a barn that has 400 horses to choose from. It just sweetens the deal.
No, it's a good story because it's nice to see these horses, and I think that's something that you brought up before, Jason. We saw a lot of that this weekend at Saratoga. A lot of big races, but they were not dominated by the people who have bigger stables. They were dominated by some smaller names, and that's really cool.
It is cool. Let's move on to Christophe Comont. Speaking of big stables, Christophe has had a wildly successful summer at Saratoga. Has about 130 career wins here. He's in the top 20 dating back to 1976 regarding Toga wins. And Lubash, credit to the horse, credit to Christophe, is like a fine wine. And he pulled the perfect trip because he's so tactical.
Absolutely. King Crisa, I think he ran his race. I think he ran fine coming back in just a few days after the 4-star Dave. I just think Lubash might be better than him at this point, at least as they go beyond a mile. And I love Lubash.
I do too. How do you not like this horse? 8 years old, and it seems like he's in the best form of his career. He's consistent. He shows up. It's like a perfect combination. Christophe training him, Junior Alvarado riding him, and Lubash just seems to love the game.
No, he really does. I love the races he's run. One thing I'll say about King Crisa, why don't they just go to the front with him? They're going a slow pace. I know Johnny gave a good ride, not a cat, little llama. Go on with King Crisa. Would he have won? Probably not, but I would have gone to the front with him.
Yeah, they went 49-1, and maybe if you don't give Johnny any almost encouragement, like, well, I'm not going fast, to keep after you, because maybe Johnny would have backed off at that point.
Who's to say that King Crisa couldn't have controlled this race on the front end? It might get a better chance. Easy to say because he lost, but it just irritates me when, I mean, it's one thing when they're going fast up front,
right.
But 10 speed horses the lead. we saw this weekend that some good horses put in good performances by being allowed to run free on the lead.
Yeah, not to belabor the point, he's a very brave horse when
Yes,
you're trying to get by him when he's setting the pace, and maybe the Mohawk is the race you get, both Lubash and King Creesa, and even not a Capitalama to an extent rematching downstate at Belmont Park. Now we go from Christophe Comont, who currently has had Lubash, I guess, over the last 5 years, to the man that started Lubash's career. Long ago, Jimmy Ryerson trained that son of Freud. Jimmy no longer has Lubash, but he's got a very precocious filly by Girolamo, who's really, as far as freshman stallions go, has been lighting the world on fire.
No, she has been terrific in here. And though I think this race went a little slower than the boys went in the first race, I like this horse. She's very precocious. I also like the performance of the runner-up, Super Surprise, who was forced to chase her the whole way. Not as though she had a bad trip in here, but she's a horse that had trouble to start in her first race, and she showed that with a cleaner trip, she can run well, too. Both nice horses.
Yeah, definitely nice horses. And it's always a tough spot to be the closest pursuer of a fast, precocious horse. It's funny you talk about the Girolamos, Jason. I heard like bad reports from that like
you were the source.
They were crooked. They were incorrect. And then they do nothing but run. So maybe looks isn't everything.
I've been joking around a couple times during the meet because I'm saying the only opinion that's been worse than mine. I didn't blame Jay because Jay said to me at the beginning of the meet, I've heard the Girolamos stink before the meet started.
And there's my
they've
source.
done nothing but win. It's amazing.
But even from the Darley people came out, they don't look that good.
What's amazing is there's no end to bad information around the racetrack.
That's why you got to love the racetrack. There is no place like it on earth. That wide swath of humanity. You've got 7 winners so far from 20 runners for Girolamo, who, as you mentioned, the runner-up, Super Surprise, and you mentioned the Colts ran a little bit faster in the first race on Friday. The funny side, a Giant Surprise has done pretty well. He's the sire of Sudden Surprise, who won the funny side.
I thought he was very impressive winning that race because it's not like he completely controlled the race. He had a 3-wide trip on the pace, and he just drew up, and he handled that Jimmy Jerkins horse, and Jimmy's had a struggle at the meet. I thought Jimmy's horse ran well in there. I just thought the winner was better.
I think it's a perfect example, too. So you get so many good horsemen up here that are, well, you could say they're struggling. The horses are running well. They're just not quite getting over the hump, and either bad racing luck or just running into some buzzsaws.
I feel like in a lot of cases at Saratoga, there are cases where trainers should get 2 wins for some of the victories. It's just hard to win.
Well, that's a good segue as we say goodbye, and we mentioned Liam's Map because we do have 3 Grade 1s remaining. That's it. The Woodward and then the 2 Classic Spa 2-year-old races and the Hopeful and the Spinaway. And Liam's Map, people are still talking about that tough loss against Honor Code and the Whitney, that he should have essentially been given the victory or he deserved a win as well, and he'll come back in the Woodward for Todd Pletcher.
And Todd's talking about running as many 4 horses in that race, and it should be a very fun race. Wicked Strong should be back. It'll be very interesting to see what Liam's Map can do because after his Whitney, nobody deserves per se, but it feels like he deserves to win the Woodward.
Yeah, he deserves that Grade 1 on his resume. I mean, that was just as brutal a beat as you're ever going to have.
And we'll see if Todd Pletcher tightens things up on Chad Brown, and we say goodbye. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of the National Racing Report. We say farewell to Saratoga next time right here on MSG Plus.